Horizon's almost UX, and this is the T-14 Armata tank sucks, Bachel, a Lazerpig. Yeah. Okay, if you're wondering why the light looks weird, because it's like a portable light. There's a blackout here, apparently. Yeah. So, Laser, I don't even know if I can finish this video. I don't know how much battery is left. Let's hope I can finish this video. But yeah, this is from Lazerpig. Yeah, I already saw the F35 video, and basically his rant on F35 video about how just, all these so-called experts are not much of experts and they don't know shit. And I guess it does make sense when you really think about it. And the problem with anything like that is that whenever people talk about this, obviously general people will just assume that generalistic integrity is going to be there, and if people are going to talk about this, they're going to think that maybe an actual expert, like people who are involved with the project, or people who are like active military generals, majors, whatever, they are the one who's saying that this doesn't work well. That's what people are going to assume, which was the case with me as well. But then when I watched the videos, like some so-called experts are saying that, I'm like, that's just shit. Like, obviously that's not right. So obviously F35 doesn't suck. It's like one of the most famous thing that is, like, F35 is not as well as people thought, which is a problem. I don't know if it's a problem or isn't that good. Like, that means that people will underestimate F35, right? I mean, I don't think that would be the case, because the actual militaries would know that it doesn't suck, but I don't know. But yeah, so this is about T-14. I guess it's like during the Ukraine war when this was launched. It's about how Russia's tank. I mean, that was the most famous things where Russia's tanks were breaking down left and right. I guess this is about that. This is going to be interesting. Let's watch it.
It built something new. Finally, the Russian army would no longer just throw more crap onto the T-72 and claim it was better because they'd made the number bigger. No, this time they'd actually done the impossible. They'd somehow managed to build and design a whole new tank. And this time it wasn't just a T-80 with an extra road wheel and a bunch of cardboard bits attached to the side. No sir, this was real. They even had multiple of them and everything. And they moved! This was real! It was actually going to be produced! So rise to your feet, every pony, and charge your glasses, for in 2015, finally, we welcomed Russia into the dawn of the 21st century of combat. No longer would Russia be shackled to its old Soviet image, strapping more and more funny armor boxes onto vehicles half a century old. No sir, this was a modern vehicle, built to compete with the very latest of modern Western armor, and this was just the beginning. Soon fleets of new vehicles, guns, and warships would propel Russia into the ranks of one, if not the most elite and advanced fighting forces in the world. So you must be asking yourself, what the fuck happened? But first, ad time.
I'm not gonna lie, the T-14 thing is the reason why people, I mean, obviously all the progression is not there, but still T-14 is like biggest image of Russia failing in Ukraine. That's why I say, oh, Russia, like one of the biggest power in the world. Not really because it's failing. It's because of T-14, I think, that people are thinking this. Yeah, but go to original video page link, and from there support this channel by playing World of Warships. It's the game, I'm not gonna lie, I'm looking for, because so obviously I was talking about different ship in the fat rotation videos, and people told me like you can actually do that with World of Warships with different, like, dreadnoughts and things like that. So yeah, this is the one game I'm looking for right now. So yeah,
They pay my rent. Anyway, back to the video.
pay my rent.
When the T-14 was unveiled, everyone and their mother in the military community pissed themselves like a frightened horse, and immediately the knuckle-dragging tank experts of the internet started huffing balls in an effort to tell us how obsolete this one new tank made everything else that came before it. It's invincible! It's the most powerful tank in the galaxy! All of the NATO nations are wetting themselves over it! Nothing can compare to the T-14 Armata! And then slowly reality set in. The T-14 combines all the ultimate in Russian technology previously introduced onto NATO tanks 25 years ago, in a way that only a country trying to inflate the share prices of Raytheon would understand. It does away with all the unnecessary ERA systems of the T-90, which cannot protect the tank against missiles that were invented in the 80s, and instead replaces them with an active protection system that can almost defend the tank against missiles that were invented in the 90s. Finally! It features a fully automated turret, a first-generation touchscreen that the commander has to claw at like a shut-in teenager desperately trying to find porn on the family computer before his mum gets back from shopping, an autoloader famous for jamming that now cannot be accessed and cleared when it does jam, is somehow heavier and slower than the tank it has replaced, and comes combined together in a package so expensive the company that made it immediately went bankrupt, the country that bought it cannot afford it, and it has about as much export potential as English whiskey. Oh dear. But for a while, every idiot with even the vaguest sense of military interest was banging on about this tank as if Stalin had come back to life and had personally forged the hull from his own ballsack, and that all tanks across every nation in the world
Stalin has come back to life. Why is that so good? I don't know why. Why does that make me so... It just tells you the people's mentality, right? Oh my god, Stalin has come to life. Right? We're just like, oh...
had just been rendered obsolete. But honestly, the T-14 is, and remains, about as threatening as a 12-year-old proclaiming his sexual prowess over your various relatives. And thankfully, due to recent events, the whaling morons that once inhabited the internet and propped up that Russia's strong culture that we don't like to talk about, but it did exist, have either slowly changed their mind when Putin finally played his 5D chess.
Nearly dropped my mic. It wasn't that long. What you talking about? Like Russia's strong thing is like just a, Ukraine war just started like 2-3 years ago, right? And everybody just like, Russian military is like, like top two militaries like US and Russia. They're like basically toe to toe with each other since the Cold War. Everybody knew that. And it's not that old that people, people used to talk about it. No, I think pretty sure even today, like, okay, people still like head scratch, like maybe Ukraine is like anomaly. Right, that's why Russia is having trouble or something. But otherwise, Russia is powerful, things like that. It wasn't that far long.
And it turned out he'd been playing 5D Snakes and Ladders the whole time, or descended down into the rabbit hole and gone full Vatnik, which are a group of people I like to file under the category of easily ignored. But hey, if you want to take advice from someone who gets all their information from a news broadcasting service where they literally arrest you for not agreeing with the government, that's up to you. Remember, it's not propaganda if you agree with it, because how could you be wrong? You're intelligent, and you thought about it really, really hard. Not like those other sheep, am I right? So Putin was supposed to have about 1,500 of these T-14s by the end of 2021. He ended up with 24. In fact, he may have even less. Keep in mind, with Russia, this is a country that, during parades, drove their nukes around the block, painted extra numbers on them, and then drove them back to the start of the parade to make them look like they had more. The rule of thumb with Russia is, if you don't see it, they don't have it.
Did they just put all Le Mans? Who was that? Like, I'm pretty sure, like, was it Ford? I think Ford did that shit, right? I mean, you have to have like certain numbers of cars in Le Mans in order to qualify, implying that this is a proper consumer car, not something like F1, which you make a prototype just for it. Same thing with MotoGP, right? I think bike equivalent of that is like SBK, World SBK, which you can use like, real bikes like Ninjas RX-10 things like that, BMW. But in a car that's Le Mans, you have to have at least 500 cars or something, if I remember correctly. So they had like 200 or 250 or something. So what they did was just show them like, oh, in this parking lot there are 250, and in other parking lot we parked another 250. They basically showed that. I think it was Lancia. Lancia did that. They just showed that and then just like took them to dinner or something. Oh, we'll get there. Just what's the rush? Let's just have a dinner. And transported all those 250 in other parking lot, implying that it's a different car.
We've seen 8 T-14s. They have 8 T-14s. Supposedly, they made their combat debut in Syria, which happens to be the most filmed and documented war in living history, and yet we saw absolutely zero footage of any T-14s in action. Rule of thumb, there were never any in Syria. In fact, in spite of every major news outlet proclaiming that the T-14s are on the way to Ukraine and may already be there, oh, shock, horror, I'd be willing to bet that no T-14 is currently in service outside of the 14th Guards Armoured Parade Division, who have recently undergone their latest modern update program by upgrading their old logo to this new one from the 1990s Microsoft clip art collection. Quite frankly, the T-14 is not the tank people think it is. It is not the final word in armoured warfare. It is not the most modern battle tank ever created that renders everything that came before it completely obsolete. It's nothing more than a fat old Russian sacred cow. And I want to explain why.
I was about to say that, like, you want to explain? T95.
A lot of people, when they think of the T-14, will tell you its design roots begin with the T-95, in that it was the first tank Russia designed after the fall of the Soviet Union. Since it was no longer constrained by Soviet ideology in battle, the Russians could basically build whatever they wanted, and immediately they went about abandoning the philosophy of the T-72 and its...
Yeah, the Soviet Union is gone, so basically they can just go into, just power drive suddenly and just make everything. It's like, you do realize there's, Soviet Union's whole thing will be felt for decades. You can't just like, oh, Soviet Union is no longer there, so it's just like, it's like a switch. Just, turn on the switch and they can just do what other countries or capitalism can do. No, that's not how it works.
Ridiculous carousel autoloader, the system which has produced some of Russia's greatest memes, and instead incorporated a more French-style cartridge autoloading system, featuring a rear ammunition compartment complete with blowout panels to protect the crew. Not only would this new autoloading system allow the T-95 to fire considerably faster than the T-90, it would also allow it to fire the more powerful and more modern shells that, to this day, the T-90 still cannot use. It would also feature a crewless turret with the crew safely contained in an armoured box, and a 30mm autocannon built to allow the tank to take on lightly armoured vehicles without having to fire the main gun. All in all, the T-95 was shaping up to be a real leap forward for Russia, both in terms of technology and military thinking. And though the tank promised a lot, everything it promised was within reason, and had it been developed, it probably would have posed a real rival to the more modern Western tanks we know and love today. There was just one tiny problem. It was being built in 90s Russia. For those of you who don't know, 90s Russia had somewhere between zero and absolutely nothing in their budget, and tank programs are famously very expensive. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, and with it, Russia lost its empire, which up till then had accounted for about half its population and around 60% of its GDP. Its overbloated military budget was largely to blame for its economic collapse, so naturally this was the first thing that had to go, leading to an almost total disarray of its army. But don't worry guys, the Russian bear is not being declawed yet. Russia may be down, but we're not out yet, which is why they charged into the 1994 Chechenian War. A war that went so badly for them, it has been cited as one of the most embarrassing defeats in the history of the Russian army. Well, it was, at any rate. Having suffered a defeat at the hands of what was essentially local militia.
I was about to say that. Are you sure? Right? Because the shit that is happening right now, like, okay. I mean, every Russians, like, especially like Putin, everybody just like, just think, like Soviet Union was a mistake, this and that. And I'm guessing all that comes from things like that. As soon as Soviet Union fell with the Chechenian War and things like that, the most embarrassing defeats, maybe their thinking is that, like, whatever thing we have right now is not working. And when the Soviet Union, with all the Soviet Union country in it, we were really powerhouse and things like that. Basically admitting that they are, they are struggling right now. And like the T-14 is like a, not that big of a deal. Then what is, like, the Abrams tank? Is that the better than this? Like, is that the best tank in the world right now? Which is one? Because I'm pretty certain, like, Abrams is like American, right? Right now, the Americans usually have the best equipment, so I'm guessing that must be it. I don't know. But this is one of the German ones. Because one thing surprised me, that even though Germans, after World War, stopped doing the military things, they still were like, German engineering. They were still making shit, right? Lots of weapons are also from Germany, so who knows?
Russia needed to look like this was just a fluke, and it was well on its way to reforming a new, far more powerful, far more modern army. It needed the world to believe that that great Russian bear was alive and well. So suddenly, without warning, comes the T-95. The tank was shown at the Omnisk Arms Convention in 1997. Now, new tank projects are rare, and when one is announced, it can cause quite a stir in the military enthusiast community. So you can bet your ass everyone was huffing balls over the T-95, especially because this was back in the 90s and really no one was really doing anything. But if you had a time machine and went back in time to see the T-95 in action, Prepare to be disappointed. The tank was kept as far away as physically possible from the crowds and observation platforms. It was covered in camouflage netting and did nothing more than drive around for a bit before being taken away. It would only ever be seen once more in a 1999 arms convention in Siberia, where it would drive around this time a little faster and even pause for a photo op, but spent most of its time hidden under a tarp. And there was a specific reason for that. See, the thing is, the T-95 never existed. In 2009, it was revealed by one Colonel Vladimir Voitov, who had apparently been in charge of the project, that the whole thing was never real. The T-95 shown was in actuality a prototype for an elongated T-80 tank that had been built in the 1980s but had never gone anywhere. This would later become recycled into something called the Black Eagle project, an upgrade package for the T-80, which also never went anywhere. The Black Eagle, wow, such an amazing, badass name. You gotta love it. I mean, it sounds like a shit Marvel superhero, but don't you just want to get into its pants? Anyway, the 1997 T-95 had a wooden mock-up turret with nothing inside it, and the 1999 version actually had a working turret installed, but again, there was nothing inside it. No radio.
That's not how R&D works. All the shit I'm hearing, just like, they were just like, trying to come up with shit just to keep up at this point, right? Because West is coming up with all this equipment and all this thing, and they're like, oh, we have to come up with something. Because R&Ds don't work like that. Oh, look at that. It's just like, there's nothing inside the turret. Okay, fine. This time has a turret, but still, like, it's not operational. Feels like way too like a, I don't know, stitching things together type of thing. That's not how R&D works. Come on.
No ammunition, no autoloader, and the gun was just a wooden mock-up. And even in this configuration, the tank proved to be so unstable, its time on the proving ground was cut short. The T-95 was nothing short of a propaganda piece, something for the cameras and the Vatniks to swoon over. It was there to prove what Russia was capable of, that it still had teeth and it was not to be underestimated, that it could still run with the big boys. It challenged their Western designs. But all it really proved that was, short of an economic miracle, Russia was going to be relying on that old Soviet stockpile a little while longer. Cut forward to the 2022 Ukraine invasion, and that's exactly what happened. But this video is not about Ukraine. It's about the T-14 Armata, because a lot of you might be saying, well, if this tank is so advanced and Russia is so desperate, then why is it not on the front lines? I mean, wouldn't that make sense? I mean, Ukraine's anti-tank policy is largely mine-focused. Yes, they have a lot of man-portable launchers, but these are mostly things like the Javelin, which are the exact munitions the T-14 was designed to beat. So surely, this would be the best weapon for them to have, right? Well, this is where it starts to get just a little bit complicated.
Damn, okay.
The failure of the T-95.
Okay, T-14 was designed to beat Javelin? I mean, I'm not gonna lie, that just makes me think, what the fuck? Which means, like, it probably didn't work, because that would be the first thing they would use. Javelins are, like, one of the things that turn things for Ukrainians, right? I mean, this makes sense, like, first of all, the tank numbers, just in sheer numbers, Russia has the most of it, or at least it had before the war. So if a lot of them are also T-14, the newer ones, they are made to defeat Javelin, like, the war would have turned out very differently. I'm guessing it didn't work, or they just didn't use T-14s, or it just didn't, like, cost issues, like, because you see images of T-14 break down left and right all the time, so who knows.
To get anywhere outside of a vodka-infused dream meant that Russia had to fall back onto its older Soviet models. Now, these models are all, they're all okay, but they all share a singular common feature: the engine. With the exception of the T-64 and some models of the T-80, every Russian tank and BMP has used the same engine, a modification of the Kharkiv Model V2, the same engine used on the Soviet Second World War era BT-7, though it's more famously for being used in the T-34 and KV series of tanks, and it's the same engine that is being used in the latest models of the T-90, giving it the classic title of the Kalashnikovs of engines, and promoting anyone over the age of 37 to immediately state, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and then act like that's an intelligent thing to say. Like we should be scared of innovation or something. I mean, the Nokia 3310 still works, but you don't have that, do you? You have an iPhone. I mean, why?
I mean, that's okay. Look, that thing, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, comes with, like, certain points. Like, let's say something like India, right? India doesn't have that much money, so that would make sense in India, because it doesn't mean you have to put ridiculous amount of technology and just things just to make it work. If it works at certain levels, it's gonna be deadly regardless of what. Like a gun is a gun, right? Now, obviously, the more advanced gun it is, it's gonna be better. But in the end, gun is a gun. It's gonna be deadly. So something like that. If it's simplistic, it works. Then it works. But I guess it depends, right? Now, there's only a certain limit you can go with that, right? After sometimes it's like technological edge is a technological edge. There's a reason why US puts a insane amount of money just for certain technology here and there. Sometimes they go way out of hand, right? Sometimes they just like basically invest in something that costs millions and billions just for some technology in there that might be useful or not, right? You can chalk that up to like politicians lobbying or whatever, but most time technology do come in play, right? There's a reason why 80s weapons is not going to be that good with today's weapons, right? So, but yeah, I guess it works, but I don't know about this, right? I mean, the engine thing, you'll think like tanks engines, like does it matter if it works? But yeah, I guess apparently the engines are breaking down, so maybe it does.
Did your 3310 broke? Or is it because there's nothing really wrong with just wanting to make things better, and that some of our greatest inventions, which you probably use every day, came about from someone just taking a regular thing and making it better? Or are you going to give up your car and go live with the Amish because there's nothing wrong with the horse and cart? It never broke, so don't fix it. Try thinking before you speak next time. The problem with the V2, while it's still fairly reliable and is an engine that do what engines do, it is, at its core, a design that is 84 years old. The design of diesel engines has dramatically changed and improved since 1937, to the point where the Western domestic market has overtaken the Russian military market. If you've got a few $1,000s in your back pocket, you can go out to America today and buy a better engine than what is equipped in the most latest and most modern of Russian main battle tanks. The V2, while it still works, is extremely bulky.
I mean, it's different, right? Like car engines are different in a way than a tank engine, right? And I understand like research and development required in a tank, and it's just like more like the Hollywood thing, right? Why take a risk on a newer thing when the older works, right? What if like newer thing doesn't work? And you need to understand Russia's GDP, right? Russia's GDP is what, like ninth, 11th? I don't even know that, right? And then their budget, right? And then now on top of that, they have to like invest in something like a newer and everything new. That's not gonna work for them.
Okay, extremely heavy, and incredibly archaic in its design. And though it weighs the same as the Abrams ATG 1500 gas turbine engines, with both being slightly over 1 ton in weight, the Abrams can push the 52-ton tank up to 42 miles an hour. The T90, in spite of being almost 10 tons lighter, can only move at a top speed of 32 miles per hour. Oh dear. The engine of the T90 is also extremely loud, much louder than that of the Abrams, which if you've ever stood next to one, you'll know why they call it the Whispering Death. It's also extremely thirsty, not just for fuel, but for oxygen, making it prone to overheating and burning out at high altitude, which became a huge problem for India when it found its T90s kept breaking down in the mountainous regions between it and China, which meant during many of its border skirmishes with China, a lot of its troops lacked urgent tank support, which led to India restarting its previously cancelled in-house tank comedy program, the Arjun. In short, as a tank, the T90 should be one of the fastest main battle tanks out there, and support
even I don't know
led
that.
to India restarting its previously cancelled in-house tank comedy program, the Arjun. In short, as a tank, the T90 should be one of the fastest.
All right. All right. I already saw the video of Task and Purpose about how Himalayans region proving more and more challenges, and they have to like come up with better weapons like German weapons, even US weapon, or even like trying to develop its in-house weapons like Arjun, like he said. And right now it might suck compared to the world standard, but yeah, that's how it works when you slowly develop. And Indians are known for this, right? You can think anything about, but Indians are known for adapting and just making things better. Look at how ISRO is working right now, right? When it, obviously it's going to take time. GDP is not that high of India compared to things, but slowly with a lower budget, they will come up with better design and better technology than you would think. So this is a good direction step. That's why India in past 7-8 years, made in India has become a really focus, right? Because all this unreliability issue and things like, it's just better to do it yourself type of thing.
Fastest main battle tanks out there. In reality, it's just as fast as the British Challenger 2, a tank which weighs 20 tons heavier than it. 20 tons heavier. It also features a comedic list of transmission problems, cooling issues, and of course it famously can't reverse. All of this means if Russia is going to produce a modern tank capable of surpassing Western designs, it's going to need a better engine. And this is where the true problems for Russia begin.
They got the mustard.
Suddenly, Putin, what does that mean?
By now, it's the 2000s, it's the new millennium. London's built a big dome, everything's white with black trim, and corners are out. Smooth is the new cool. And what could be more cool than Russia's smooth-headed new president, Vladimir Putin? Putin launches his new presidency with a new war. It's back to Chechnya.
What do you mean new? Wasn't he president in 1995? I think he was president in 1995. Then I think around 2000 he was like a prime minister for a bit. Then he was president again. Right? He was like, for once he tipped out that. I'm pretty sure the first time he became president or something was 1995 or 96, I think. And I'm pretty sure, I don't know.
This time, Chechnya's annexed, but it would take them 7 years and at a cost of 12,000 of its own soldiers. The war showed that while changes had been made, the Russian army was still a shadow of its former power. In response, Putin announces a series of changes to the Russian military, hailing it as the single greatest military reform in the world. And while the promise of new equipment and better streamlined training bore the focus, in reality, the reforms were largely about reducing the army's size, cutting the number of officers down by 61%, and the number of training skills from 65 to 10. And there's a reason for that. Putin's greatest fear is that a political hero figure will one day rise up through the ranks to challenge him for the presidency, and the place this was most likely to come from was the army. He knew no matter how many knives glinted in the darkness behind him, no one would dare be the first to strike if there was no one powerful enough to replace him, and this included the West. So through these reforms, the army became something young people did to earn merits to secure better jobs and university places. Anyone who remained in the army was typically seen as someone who couldn't advance beyond it, who wasn't capable of doing anything better. For context, think of how society treats a typical McDonald's employee.
Yes, seriously, that shit is insane. That's how it is. That's how the social mentality of that is. Oh, look at that. You're doing military now. You can't do anything else, so you're still in the military. You can have that kind of mentality when it comes to military, especially if it's something like especially times like, war and things. Like, imagine that. Like, oh, he's in military. It's like, he's like like he said, like some basic employee or something like McDonald's cashier or something. Like, you can't see military like that. Come on.
Officer promotions were handed out based on loyalty rather than ability, stockpiles became shopping markets for scrap metal merchants and arms dealers, and logistics was taken away from the military and reformed into a civilian branch, its ranks filled by mafia members who would turn a blind eye to the theft and sale of equipment. And if you don't want to know the result of that, look away now. But Putin had made one major mistake. While this kind of system helped reduce the potential of anyone competent in his army rising high enough to challenge him, it meant his military also became a breeding ground for the lazy and the incompetent.
I was about to say that, like, if you're gonna do this, you're not gonna have anybody that's like powerful enough. Like, look at fat electrician. Why I have a problem saying that? My tongue is fat electrician. There you go. Look at the fat electrician video, right? Where he talks about the badass people from different, obviously Americans, but different places, different wars and things. How are you going to have that in Russia if you're not going to let somebody be at that level in the first place, right? Oh, I'm like, what if somebody comes up and just like, come on, man, really? I mean, I feel like his fear is like unfounded. Like, you need to have some kind of a charisma as well, and that's not really important in military. Military generals and people are not charismatic in that way. They're more hard-headed. Like, they're military figures. You can't just be a president or something without having any charisma. So I think his fear was unfounded, right? In some other branches, sure, but military, he should have let people be, because that was the one thing Russia had, like our military. When their GDP is not doing that well and things like that, right? They're what, like 9th, 10th? I don't even know the number, but something like that. They're not top 3 GDP-wise. So military is one thing they should have let it flourish at least. Letting not people be that big, it just means like your military is going to be weaker because the command is not that strong.
And this would be proven in the 2014 invasion of Ukraine. Politically, the 2014 invasion of Ukraine is a masterpiece. It left the Western nations dumbfounded and slow to react, the Western press arguing over who to support, and legions of military nerds giggling at how badass Putin was. But the actual ground campaign did not go over smoothly. Ukraine's army was tiny,
What What you mean bad? Didn't you see the horse video photo? Shirtless. Come on, that's badass. Come on. Well, I don't know. I don't know what to think of that, right? Like, I still remember before Ukraine thing, people just point blank thinking like, since Americans presidents change all the time, they're not gonna be as strong as Putin, and just like Russia is more powerful in the US in that regards. If war breaks out tomorrow, US is fucked. And now look at the case in Ukraine. Just simple American NATO equipment alone is making Ukraine powerful.
Trained, highly demotivated, with just a handful of working tanks and almost no logistics to speak of. And though Russia was able to take Crimea, its longer-term objectives to rob Ukraine of its entire coastline, taking Odessa and Mariupol, failed dramatically. Ukraine was able to recapture most of its territory and retake control of the border. And what was worse, its elite troops in the south of Ukraine had been repelled outside of Mariupol by an armed militia known as the Azov Legion. This humiliation is often why you see so much anti-Azov propaganda. Putin was not stupid. He knew his army was largely incapable and had banked on lightning-fast attacks which could overwhelm Ukraine before it could react. He had pinned his hopes on his elite units of the VDV and the 1st Guards Armoured, as well as his own personal army, the PMC Wagner Group, believing that their heroic reputation alone would be enough to spare these units the worst of the corruption. But he was wrong. The VDV and Wagner's performance was somewhat lackluster. Ukraine had organized itself a lot faster than expected, and by the time Russian troops were ready to try again, British, American, and French troops were massing on the borders of Estonia. Once again, the Russian army had proved itself incapable. The image of the Great Russian Bear was waning, and though the great propaganda machine rolled without much challenge, so the average Western armchair warlord would believe this was a Russian victory, the experts were watching with concerned expressions. Russia had taken 8,000 losses. Losses it should never have statistically taken. So at the end of 2014, Putin would launch yet another series of great reforms. He would attempt to bolster the power and the reputation of Russia's more elite divisions, reactivating a number of older divisions.
Like, I understand all this, but just stick to technicals, man. I want to know why T14 sucks, rather than all this. Like, let's understand the mentality of Russia and Putin and something like that. I understand that, but I would specifically want to just know why T14, engineer-wise sucks, right? I'm an engineer, like to see these things like, why does it suck? Right, like what is the very specific thing? I get it, he's trying to point out like how structure is bad and how things are bad all around, but yeah.
From Soviet times, and placing an emphasis that new equipment and more specialist training was to be reserved for them, believing that the title of guards, as well as the positions of pride and parades, would promote a more professional attitude among its members. And pride of this new reformed Russian army was the new T-14, a family of vehicles based on the new tank chassis, which would include IFVs and support vehicles. But by then, the damage was already done.
How bad can I be? I'm just doing what comes naturally. How bad can I be?
As mentioned earlier, the concept of a new Russian tank would mean having to finally can the V2 engine. Western engines had drastically greater power-to-weight ratios, and if this new tank was going to incorporate all the new systems a tank needed, as well as remain both mobile enough and low-profile enough to suit the demands of Russian war planning, Russia would need an entire new engine to suit this new tank. One that was modern, lightweight, yet powerful enough to drive the tank's final projected weight of 50 tons. There was just one slight problem. Such an engine didn't exist. Now, Ural were the people behind the T-14 Armata project, and in their brilliance that could only possibly come to a bunch of people high on mountain air and vodka, decided just to copy the German SLA-16. You know, the engine from the Second World War Nazi tank, the Porsche Tiger. The famously unreliable. The reason they went with this engine is because Russia didn't want to rely on Western imports, before building a tank that relied almost entirely on Western imports. What was going on in these people's heads? It might have also been because a considerable number of them had been captured by the...
All of the Tiger was unreliable? What you talking about? It was? I can't imagine Porsche making something unreliable. When they say over-engineer and German engineering, they're talking about Porsche. Porsche is like how James Smith once said, like Germans of the German, right? Porsche just over-engineer the fuck out of everything, right? That's the one thing. Like Mercedes, BMW, they're like German engineering. But if you want more than that, you go to Porsche. It's like even more German engineering. So Porsche fucking things up, it just feels weird.
advancing Red Army during the Second World War. There had been considerable studies of the engine, and a Russian modified version of it now existed, which was the version of the engine Ural had chosen. The problem was, this version of the engine they wanted, the A85-3, had been built to power oil compressing and pumping stations, not heavy vehicles. The engine had been a complete commercial failure. No one wanted it because, surprise surprise, it was unreliable. But Ural looked upon this unreliable, modified commercial failure of a pumping engine ripped out of a Second World War German tank famed for breaking down constantly, and thought, yes, from this engine we shall build a new Russian tank. And so it began. The T-14 was built around the engine. This would have been fine, had the engine been any good. Ural, for reasons only known to them, believed they could fix any problems along the way, and accepted huge government contracts to produce the new vehicle. But there was another problem, and it's called brain drain. And no, it's not a 60s horror flick. Look, let me give you an example. Congratulations, you've been born in Russia. You're now a proud member of the greatest country in the world, according to them. You've gone through all the mandatory 18-year wait period, gotten into university, and now passed with your groovy new qualification in engineering. So what do you do with your life? I mean, you could stay in Russia and live in a home like this and earn roughly $14,000 a year, or you could move to America, where you could live in a home like this, earn $60,000 to $80,000 a year, rising to $120,000 depending on experience and industry sector. You see where this is going. Brain drain is the expression given to the problem of young, intelligent people choosing to work or study in foreign countries where the pay and quality of life are vastly greater. In Russia, the long-term strategy, where funds were never diverted into making life better for the average worker, means most people outside of a specific few live lives comparable to England in the 1970s. Now, many, most notably people who don't live in Russia, claim it's a culture thing, as luxury is just not a priority to the average Russian. And within Russia, there does exist a certain degree of an almost toxic masculinity culture, wherein
that's like saying, like, okay, it's a culture thing. People don't want good shit. Like, no, that's like all humans want good shit. So that's brain drain. Yeah, that's also an issue in India. I guess it's decreasing now. I don't know. But yeah, there's a reason why you Americans, when you go to hospitals or whatever, there's like whatever head of the department, some Indian. Google CEO is Indian, right? Nowadays, everything's head is Indian someone. That's brain drain from India.
impoverished life and hardship is worshipped as being manly. But Russians are still human. Give a Russian a mansion and he won't turn it into a Slavic slum to prove how much of a man he is. He will just start living a more comfortable life, and if you take it away from him, he will naturally get angry and want it back, as would anyone. The pre-war economic boom of modern-day Russia created fairly wealthy districts within Russian cities, most especially Moscow and St. Petersburg, and when young Russians went there for work or study, they realized very quickly that they quite liked wearing designer clothes, having iPhones, and running water. And they didn't particularly want to return to their hometown, where the likelihood of having an indoor toilet decreases significantly the further from Moscow you are. Nor did they particularly want to live a life where, even with a full-time engineering job, rent in Moscow is on average 90% to your paycheck, or about $900 a month, which means most have to take on flatmates to make ends meet. Or you could move to the West, where you could have all of those things, plus more, plus your own apartment, which you could afford with your significantly higher wage, plus an indoor toilet, plus running water all year. This is why in the mid-2000s, the West experienced a mass Russian migration, especially in countries like Germany. It's also why, when it comes to things like electronic components, heavy machinery, and even pharmaceuticals, Russia is still heavily dependent on Western imports. What that meant is when Ural were designing their new tank, they did not exactly have a huge pool of expertise to rely on, which is why they probably went for an engine which already existed rather than try to develop one of their own, believing that modifying the existing design to suit their needs would be far easier, even if it meant putting a Nazi machine inside a Russian tank, as it paraded through Red Square on the day celebrating Russia's victory over Germany in World War II. It is perhaps for this reason that when the T-14 was first seen during a rehearsal,
God, I'm not gonna lie, that's such an insane shit. The parade is supposed to be like, look, we won over Nazi Germany and we are using the engine from Nazi Germany. That is some insane shit. We couldn't find any other engine. You had to use a Nazi engine. This is like on the nose. So yeah, so far it's like brain drain. You know, but smart people are going to the other places, I guess. So you don't have people to innovate things. Obviously the engine sucks. So that's gonna be, I don't know, man. They should have. I don't care if they should have put like more money and more time into it, but they should have like developed it better. because engine matters, right? Your tank is nothing if your engine's fucked, right? A lot of electronics would not work if your engine's not working either. That's the whole thing. Everything from alternative things, none of that would work. Engine matters, right? This is insane. You know what? I'm going to do part 2 tomorrow, because I don't know how much my mobile is gonna, how much battery is left. But yeah, this was really interesting. I guess in the last portion of the video, he's gonna explain more issues, because so far I just like engine issues. And I feel like that's the biggest issue, right? Because that's the one thing, like breaking down. That was a problem this tank had from around. So I'm guessing Abrams is the best engine. Somebody say in the comment which is the best tank right now. Just point blank, just best tank all around. I'm guessing it would be Abrams. I don't know. Alright, well, if you like my next one, don't forget to subscribe. That way, I know which other videos to react to more, and that way you can help this channel, I guess, by helping the algorithm and things. And yeah, comment down if you want to do any other reactions, and I'll see you next time.